Ladies and gentlemen, we live in troubled times indeed. We seem to be governed by a tawdry collection of tyrants, charlatans, idiots, and tyrannical, idiotic charlatans. But if you're a keen photographer, one of the most troubling questions is black and white or colour? It's not always an easy question. Back in the day, in the 60s, 70s and maybe the 80s, if you were a serious macho photographer going into war zones or doing gritty social photojournalism, or you were just super cool, you would shoot in black and white, and colour was generally left to the noobs and amateurs and tourist snaps. Black and white was a virtual hallmark of serious professionalism. That is no longer the case, of course, and with digital photography we have the luxury of viewing our images in both colour and monotone, at least if you're shooting in the RAW format, which you should be doing. These Maplethorpe flowers are beautiful, shot perhaps counterintuitively in black and white. The sensual, balletic form of the flower, its fragility, its texture, its lightness, its vulnerability is brought out in these black and white images, and their colour is deemed inessential. I generally prefer black and white. I always tell people there's more colour in black and white photography. I think because I'm more interested in form, in light, texture, pattern, the juxtaposition of elements, lines, planes of tones, and perhaps I'm less interested in local colour. But there are always exceptions, and every image should be taken on a case-by-case basis. Perhaps if we look at some of my own work, we can see how the process works more clearly. My own work is in the documentary tradition, I would say, mainly landscapes, architecture, still life. I took this image, I think about a month ago now, very close to my house. You can see why I'm a landscape photographer. I live in the Ariège department of the French Pyrenees. My house is 3,000 feet altitude, so I literally only need to step outside to see this kind of glorious countryside. I was interested here in the texture of the landscape, that the snow delineates very well, I think, and also the cloud formations. In colour is also interesting. I took this image about, I think it was about 8:30 in the morning, so the sun was just coming up. But I've got a problem with sunrises and sunsets. I try and avoid them, just simply because I just find them too overdone. You know, if I never see another orange photograph, it will be too soon. So even though the colour image, you know, it's not bad. I quite like the subtle yellows and blues of the sky there. But what I really wanted to bring out was, you know, the strong diagonal of that mountain, the peculiar lip-like formation of the clouds, and the texture of the trees and the forest there. I quite like the strangeness of this image. I was going for a walk with my dog, as I often do, and this thing appeared to float in front of me. In fact, it's just an old wooden fence post. But because of the time of day, it must have been late afternoon, the sun was low on the horizon, and so the light was hitting it almost horizontally, and it gave it this weird shimmering, floating quality to it. And the colour version, the colour version works quite well too. I like the the winter tones there of the russets and the browns and the golds and the blue sky. But it's a tough call. But I think on balance I prefer the black and white image. It just adds to that sense of strangeness. One of the problems with black and white, if you can call it a problem, is that it makes everything beautiful. That's the reason why all those famous war images by Don McCullin and others are slightly problematic for me, because, I mean, they're great, powerful images, there's no question about that. But black and white aestheticizes everything. It takes things out of the ordinary, out of reality, and makes them other, if you like. It makes them into art objects. And you can easily imagine these images in a nice frame hanging in a New York loft. Rather than making images boring, black and white, I think, does the opposite. It helps to make them more beautiful, more powerful, gives them a graphic force that hits you in the gut. It's also problematic because then it becomes the easy option to shoot everything in black and white. It's quite difficult to make a bad image in black and white, actually, because it will always have this graphic, gritty quality. And it's for that reason I also shoot in colour, particularly if I want to impart a sort of mundane, dreary reality to the photograph, or if, of course, colour is integral to the feel of the image.